What if I told you that a single, totally quiet belief is constantly steering the entire course of your life? I mean, it literally dictates how you handle stress, how you navigate your relationships, and ultimately whether you ever truly reach your potential. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into the psychology of mindset. This is a concept that fundamentally flips how we view human potential, talent, and success. We're going to break down the absolutely profound research of Dweck to figure out exactly why some people just crumble under pressure while others completely thrive. To kick things off, I want you to imagine having a genuinely terrible day. Okay, let's say you get a C+ on a paper you worked really, really hard on. Then you walk out to your car and bam, there's a parking ticket slapped right on the windshield. And to top the whole shebang off, later that afternoon, a good friend just completely brushes you off. How do you react? Well, the source material reveals that our reaction to these totally ordinary setbacks totally exposes our underlying psychological framework. For some people, this exact sequence of events creates absolute paralysis. They interpret it as undeniable proof that they're basically a failure. They just want to stay in bed, maybe grab a drink, or pick a fight. But for others facing the exact same events, they think, okay, I need to study differently for the next paper, I should definitely contest that parking ticket, and I need to check if my friend is having a rough day. Nothing catastrophic actually happened in either scenario, right? Yet one worldview manufactured paralysis and the other manufactured action. Okay, let's dive into our agenda for today. We've got 1. Two beliefs, two worlds. 2. The myth of effortless genius. 3. When looking smart backfires. 4. Mindset in love and leadership. 5. Nuance, not a magic pill. And 6. How to build your armor. Section 1. Two beliefs, two worlds. Let's define the single variable that dictates our risk tolerance and our resilience. So Dweck isolated the psychological variable that basically separates human behavior into two completely different camps. On one side, you've got the fixed mindset. This is the belief that your intelligence, your personality, your abilities, they are carved in stone. It's the hand you were dealt at birth, and your only job in life is to just keep proving you have a good hand. On the other side, though, you have the growth mindset. This is the belief that those exact same qualities are simply starting points. They're malleable, they can be developed, cultivated, and totally expanded through effort and experience. To really see this core split in action, you just have to look at how 4-year-olds handle puzzles when you offer them a choice. The 4-year-olds with a fixed mindset, they chose to redo an easy puzzle they had already finished. Why? Because it guaranteed success, right? It proved their competence. But the growth-minded kids, they attacked the harder puzzles. In fact, they were literally baffled as to why anyone would want to repeat a puzzle they'd already mastered. To them, the goal wasn't to prove competence at all, it was to build it. Moving on to Section 2. The myth of effortless genius. This brings us to a deeply ingrained cultural narrative we urgently need to talk about. We have this idea that true, raw talent doesn't require hard work. But a single snapshot of ability is absolutely not destiny. Just listen to this list of absolute legends. Charles Darwin, Elvis Presley, Lucille Ball, Ray Charles. What do they all have in common? Every single one of them was considered a late bloomer, or they were entirely written off by experts early in their careers. Experts actually told them they had no future. If they had operated with a fixed mindset, taking that one single evaluation as a permanent definition of their worth, we literally wouldn't know their names today. The fixed mindset grants one single evaluation the power to define you forever. But potential, by definition, is the capacity to develop over time. The crazy thing is, the fixed mindset actually treats effort as something shameful. The flawed logic goes kind of like this. If you were truly gifted, well, things will just come easily to you. Having to try hard means you aren't a natural. Take child prodigy violinist Nadja Salerno Sonnenberg. She became so terrified of trying and failing because that would strip away her genius excuse that she literally stopped bringing her violin to lessons until her teacher threatened to expel her. Now contrast that with Michael Jordan. Cut from his high school varsity team, right? He didn't hide his effort. He became, by his own account, the hardest worker in the sport. Effort isn't proof you lack talent. It's the very mechanism that ignites it. Section 3. When looking smart backfires. Let's transition from athletes to the real-world, everyday costs of this stuff. Prioritizing a smart label over actual learning can be surprisingly destructive. To show you how a fixed mindset turns self-protection into straight-up self-destruction, check out this study from the University of Hong Kong. So all instruction at this university is in English. Researchers found that incoming students who had weak English skills but possessed a fixed mindset actively declined to take a remedial English course. Think about that for a second. They were willing to jeopardize their entire college degree, effectively sabotaging their actual life outcomes, just to avoid exposing a deficiency. They chose to feel smart in the short term over actually becoming competent in the long term. And when scientists actually look at brainwave data, the results are a quiet bombshell. The data shows that mindset filters human attention itself before we even make a conscious choice. When they monitored these brainwaves, they found that for fixed mindset people, their attention spiked only when the feedback they received judged their ability. But the very moment the correct answers, like the actual learning materials, were presented, their attention went completely dark. Growth-minded people, however, locked their attention in, specifically when the learning was happening. And this drive to constantly look smart creates a really dangerous trap, especially for kids. Across 7 different studies, researchers found that when kids were praised for their intelligence, told they were smart after a success, it totally backfired. It made them avoid challenging tasks just to protect that smart label. And honestly, worst of all, nearly 40% of the intelligence-praised children actually lied about their scores to their peers. 40%. Labeling a child a natural teaches them that imperfection is shameful. Instead, the research screams that we absolutely must praise the strategy and the struggle, never the brains. Section 4, Mindset in Love and Leadership. Because this psychological variable doesn't just stay in the classroom. It cascades outward, deeply impacting corporate boardrooms and even our most intimate romantic relationships. I mean, talent worship can literally sink companies. The infamous collapse of Enron was fueled by a toxic culture that was just obsessed with being the smartest people in the room. This fixed mindset environment forced employees to hide flaws and lie rather than admit problems, because doing so would mean they weren't brilliant. On the flip side, Jim Collins' research on companies that leaped from good to great showed they were actually led by self-effacing people. Leaders like Jack Welch, who relentlessly confronted brutal facts, who went down to the factory floors to hear the bad news, and built engines of development rather than monuments to their own egos. And in love, a fixed mindset can be equally disastrous. It breeds these fairy tale beliefs. The assumption that if a relationship is right, it shouldn't require any effort at all. You should just magically read each other's minds. Because of this, when fixed mindset individuals experience rejection, or honestly even minor disagreements with a partner, they feel incredibly threatened. Rejection feels like this permanent verdict that they are fundamentally unlovable, which often fuels hostility and this toxic craving for revenge. Growth-minded people, though, view relationship issues as just a problem to address, and they actively seek to understand, forgive, and learn for the future. Section 5, Nuance, not a magic pill. We have to address the scientific complexity here. We really need to make sure we aren't oversimplifying this incredibly powerful psychological tool into some cheap self-help gimmick. In recent years, large-scale studies have right-sized the mindset concept. The effects are very real, for sure, but they are modest. Adopting a growth mindset is not a magic panacea that fixes everything instantly. Saying just try harder is entirely insufficient if you don't have a good strategy to apply that effort toward. Furthermore, mindset constantly interacts with structural opportunity. Resources, teaching quality, access, all of that matters immensely. Mindset is one absolutely vital ingredient for success, but it cannot replace structural support. However, where mindset truly shines is as psychological armor. Research into stereotype threat shows that simply checking a box for race or sex before a test can actually lower scores, but primarily for those in a fixed mindset who internalize that prejudice as a permanent verdict on their group. A growth mindset diffuses this psychological threat. It allows targets of prejudice to see the bias purely as someone else's distorted view, rather than a definitive statement about their own abilities. Mindset is a tool to help individuals survive and push forward, maintaining their focus and resilience in the face of very real structural hurdles. Section 6, How to Build Your Armor. Let's get to the actionable climax of our explainer. So, knowing all this, how do we actually catch that critical, fixed mindset voice in our heads and practically pivot toward growth? Well, just deciding you want a growth mindset isn't enough. Intensely vowing to change your ways rarely produces actual action. Behavioral science points us to Peter Gollwitzer's concept of implementation intentions. The secret to bridging the gap between wanting to grow and actually growing is making a vivid, concrete plan. And here is the absolute best part. You don't even need to feel motivated to act. You can feel terrible, sad, or totally defeated and still execute a concrete plan. Motivation usually follows action, not the other way around. Take the example of a rejected graduate school applicant. Instead of just stewing in failure or making some vague resolution to do better, she created an implementation intention. When? Tomorrow during break. Where? In the office with a closed door. How? Dial the admissions office and ask exactly how to improve the application for next time. She executed the plan, and the department was so impressed by her initiative, they actually admitted her. By specifying the when, the where, and the how, she converted a fuzzy goal into an actionable trigger. This single quote from the research perfectly summarizes our entire core thesis today. Effort is what makes you smart or talented. Effort is not the consolation prize for the untalented, it is the absolute activator of human potential. Failure is not a permanent identity, it is simply temporary data and information. The old fixed beliefs might never fully vanish. They might always try to whisper that you just aren't good enough, but your mindset is not a permanent personality test. It is a moment-to-moment choice you get to make every single day. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. As you step away from this explainer today and face your very next setback, whether it's a harsh email from your boss, a failed project, or just a really annoying parking ticket on your windshield, what are you going to do? Will you treat today as a rigid test of your worth, or will you use it as an opportunity to develop? The choice and the potential that follows is entirely yours.